guys, it's March 3rd, 2023. I'm Kimberly from Fat Quarter Shop, and this is a pre-recorded live stream, but I would love for you guys to chat. We'll answer all the questions. I happen to be in Tennessee today. So I wanted to still do our Sewcialites tutorial. So this week is block 18, and the designer of this is Robin Pickens, and the pattern is called Spellbound. So I wanted to talk a little bit about the sew along in case you haven't heard about it. So Sewcialites, each week we give you a 3-inch, 6-inch, and 9-inch block for free. So this is today's block. I'm trying to keep a note over here, sorry. Okay, so this block has an hourglass in the center, 16 squares, 12 squares around, and then 4 squares out here. So I'm going to first show you the block and then talk a little bit about the different technique I'm going to teach you today. So this is Camille Ross Kelly, Zen Chic, Fig Tree. This is Sweetwater, Christopher Thompson from Riley Blake, Emma by Sherry and Chelsea, Isabella by Minnick and Simpson, and The Flower Farm by Bunny Hill. And I'm going to make all these fit, and then we're going to talk about how Kimberly Jolly complicated this block. So this block has an hourglass in the center, and we learned about hourglasses last week. So you can refer to that video. I'm going to make the hourglass block for you. Now what the designer designed is that you pick 4 fabrics. And from each fabric, you cut 4 squares. So just look at the color placement before I move everything. Well, I'll just show you in this block. So fabric 1 is used 4 places. Fabric 2, 4 places. Fabric 3, fabric 4. So you put the fabrics wherever you want, however you think it looks best. So on this one, you can see we have 2 matching on corners, 2 scrappy. This sample maker used all of the same on the outside and then used just 3 on the inside. This sample sewer just used 1 different one. The one I wanted to show you that is the most uniform is, I saw it earlier, there's one that's exactly uniform. It's this one. So this designer did this, so this reverse, so this, and then flipped these 2 and then used that. So you can make it scrappy, you can plan it, you can do it however you want. What we're going to do today is focus on this one. So today we're sewing the 3-inch size, and I'm going to show you how I'm going to do mine a little bit differently. So here are the 4 fabrics that are used for the squares. Okay, when you look at the pattern, it tells you to cut 4 1-inch squares from all 4 fabrics. That gives you 16 1-inch squares. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to complicate it, and I'm really sorry that I'm going to complicate it, but I'm just giving you this tip because if you are new at sewing 3-inch, this will help you. So what I did instead is I cut these all 1-inch. I cut my outside 1.5. Now these are supposed to be cut 1 by 2.5. And I cut them 1.5 by 2.5. And what that's going to give me is the ability to trim my block down. Because if you're not used to doing the 3.5, that will help you. But if you're not, then just sew it exactly like it says. But I'm just giving you my tips for today. I know sometimes you guys don't like it when I go rogue, but I'm just showing you what I would do at home, especially if it's a 3-inch block. So I'm going to put my block over here for reference. And you're going to take your, can I have a different design board? we're going to take fabric A, now that I complicated things, and our fabric C's, and that is going to originally be a square. So originally these were squares, and if you refer to last Friday's video, I show you how to cut on the diagonal twice and how to cut that accurately, and how we have written our pattern to be a 1/4 inch bigger so we can trim down. So anything you want to learn about hourglass for the 3-inch size, you're gonna go to last week. But what I am gonna do is I'm gonna make this hourglass right here to start. So I don't need all of the triangles. You're gonna save these white for, you don't need these either. You could sew an extra block and put it on the back of your quilt if you wanted to. Now what I'm gonna do here is put these right sides together. And like I talked about last week, just use a thin pin so that everything stays exactly like it should be. And anytime I'm doing 3-inch, I'm gonna pin, pin, pin. And we're gonna be trimming this down. So originally, if you were making this normally, you would cut the square 2 1/4 inch for the 3-inch size. But this time we're doing 2 1/2. I'm gonna stitch down here, iron, we're gonna stitch across, and we're gonna trim down. And when I'm working with 3-inch blocks, you're gonna notice my hands more in the block, and that's because I need it to stay exactly where it is. So I apologize if my hands get in the way. I tried to make it where my hands stay out of the way, but on a 3-inch block, it's kind of hard. Now I am using a 1.2, 1.3 stitch length. I'm gonna press to one side. Press open. And I love hourglass blocks because with half square triangles, I use triangle paper. With flying geese, I also either use triangle paper or Eleanor Burns ruler. With hourglass, I don't need any paper. I just cut bigger and trim down. And that gives me the accuracy that I like. Sorry, I have the hiccups. And we're gonna pin here, and we're gonna sew down here. And that's what I love about quilting, is you come up with what you like best. You know, some people just make half square triangles the normal way. Just find whatever works best for you. So from here, I need to trim this to 1 1/2 inches. And last week I showed you how to put the tape on your ruler so that you have it lined up. So you're going to line the center, which is your 3/4 inch, right on that center. And you need this and this. So this touches, but that does not. So because it doesn't touch, I'm going to shift it. And really what you just need is you need the 4 points to match, because that's what's going to create your 1/4 inch seam. And then you rotate, and then you're going to do the same thing. And that's the beauty of hourglass, is whenever you're making an hourglass block or quilt, there should be no reason why it doesn't come out pretty, because you know when you waste, you're wasting so little. So there's my hourglass, nice and pretty. And if you look, you should have a perfect diagonal 45-degree angle. Sorry, I don't know my angles. I have to ask people my angles. I did make an A in geometry somehow. Okay. So now we're going to build the block. So we're starting in the center and we're going to build to the outside. So to do that, I'm going to put one here and one here. Now this is already sewn together, just so that we don't have to sew so much on camera. So you can see the difference in sewn and not sewn with the 3-inch. So you can really see that. This is going to go to the top. And then these are my D's that are going to go down here. So I'm going to take these off because these are already sewn together. And okay, I want to zoom into this right here. Now, when you press open on this block, those 1/4 inch, they touch exactly because, and you shouldn't see anything if you're pressing open. It looks kind of like the front and the back. So there's the front and the back because you've pressed open. So what I'm going to do is go to the sewing machine and we're just going to sew this together and we're going to sew these together. But on these, I'm going to press every single time before I add, because if you don't, I do feel like you're going to get less accurate results. So I'm going to put these aside and we're going to focus on 1/4 inch and 1/4 inch. Actually, I can do this. I'm going to pin this. Okay, hold on. I don't think I have it laid out right. And I'm trying to make sure my diagonals go the same way. And if you're going to do it scrappy, you don't have to be as OCD as me at this. So with a 1/4 inch seam. Now these, as I sew, I'm going to put them back on the board where they go. So I try not to make any mistake on that. Set my seam. Press to one side, press open. It's going to go there. Now, if I was doing the 12-inch or 9-inch, the 9-inch block, I would sew all 4 of these together at once. But these, the seams are so small. I'm gonna do it this way. Now what I'm going to do here, we can do 2 things. The first thing I'm going to do is these 2 can be sewn together. So I'm going to pin there. And the key to 3-inch is just pinning. Now here I'm going to make sure my blue's in the right spot. And I'm going to sew here. And this seam doesn't touch that. Let's show you. So here, if I put this right sides together, if I sew here and sew here, I'm not going to sew into the seam. So I'm going to go ahead and add that and sew these together at once. And when you pin, it just makes it easy when you go to the sewing machines. You don't have to think. So you can see I have my finger right here. That's because I need everything to stay flat on the 3-inch. Rotate. Okay. And these are just small pieces, so the less you shake your iron like that on your fabric, the better. So you just want it to be nice and flat. And the iron is really hot. Now this is when the clapper is great. When you have this many seams to get everything nice and flat, it's great to use at this point. Okay, so this is how my block looks. Now, let's go to the other table. When you're looking at this, if you've sewn correctly, which, you know, sometimes happens, sometimes doesn't, this should be exactly a 1/4 inch away. And so that seam should match. So what I'm going to do is first put this together, pin the ends, and then we're going to match the rest. Now, it's going to seem like one side's bigger than the other, and that happens more often on a 3-inch. Now here, I'm going to just put that together to make sure that seam matches. And we've just done a scrappy layout for the squares. I just was trying to replicate the previous one. And then I'm going to do the other side at the same time. Put that together and just pin. And if your pins are thin enough, it's not going to interfere. If you have super thick pins, it might not be the best to do this all at once. Okay, now when you're sewing this seam, there's 2 schools of thought. I'm going to just sew 1/4 inch seam. Some people would sew with this on top so that they can make sure their needle goes right in that point. But I'm just hoping it's going to work, and I'm just going to do it from this side. And hopefully my points match, and they do. So I find doing it that way is more accurate for me. I feel like if I'm trying to hit a point, it makes me go veer off a little bit. So you can see those points match perfectly. But you should do whatever works best for you. I just get better results with the square on top rather than the point. Now this is a lot of seams. Okay. So now we're going to cheat. Now this is something I do sometimes. Sometimes I do it, sometimes I don't. Sometimes I do it, what's that commercial? Sometimes, da 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 da. Anyway, I cut these 1/2 inch bigger. So instead of 1 inch, I cut them 1.5. And that's gonna enable me to trim the block down. Now technically, I know most of you in the comments are gonna say, well, if you cut correctly and you piece correctly, you shouldn't have to do this. And that's absolutely correct. But I wanna give this as an option for people who have not tried a 3 inch and are getting their feet wet doing it, because this will give them some flexibility. So here I'm going to just pin this. I kind of think in terms of rows, columns, that kind of thing. So I'm just going to pin, and this is a little wonky, but I'm going to pin at the top and the bottom. And it will even out. And then we're going to sew down. And you'll see when I sew this, I'm going to stretch it a little bit. Okay, I got the fabric on the wrong side. Okay, flip that around. I'm actually going to just sew these. I'm actually going to sew these and then add the corners and then do that other one separately. Okay, so with this one, it's easier for me to stitch with all the seams on the bottom and put the background on top. And then make sure everything's flat and pull. And then we're going to add the other side and do the same thing. So I'm going to set my seam, press to one side, and then do the same thing here. And this one was just easier to do the outsides together and the insides together just because lots of seams. Set these seams, open. And you'll have to let me know if you try this method in the comments and let me know what results you get. Now, obviously we'll have to get to where I'm showing you how to trim down. Cut these apart and then lay your block out. Okay. So the way that we planned it is all I cared about was I wanted these little peppermint stripes to go that way, go the same direction. And another tip for this is the smaller your block, the smaller scale prints you want to use. You wouldn't use like a big, huge floral unless you were fussy cutting it. So I'm going to pin these together and I'm just going to focus on the intersections like I always do. And I'm going to pin both sides and then I'm going to show you how to trim down. Now you see this gap right here. when I'm sewing, I think it'll work itself out. If it doesn't, I'll fix it. I'll show you how to fix it somehow. I think I can get it to work in. And again, I'm going to sew with all those busy seams on the bottom. Okay, once I get there, I'm going to pull. Ow. And I want to make sure everything's flat. And you just hold this taut. And do the same thing on the other side. Put all those seams on the bottom and you can pull it. Once you get past that seam, you pull. And it worked itself out. And again, if it was cut perfectly and pieced perfectly, you wouldn't have to pull, but nothing's gonna ever come out exact, even though I try. It's still gonna be a little off. And the key is just everything nice and flat. So like I said, this is bigger. It's an inch bigger because I cut it bigger. So before you trim anything down, see how it's not like, if you look at my 6-inch block, you can see how pretty it is on the edge. When you get a 3-inch block, it's just not as pretty. It's wonky. And it's a little bit wonky here. Like this is a little bit wonky right there. So what I'm gonna do is show you how to trim down. So first I'm gonna do two different things. I'm gonna look at my pattern, and my pattern was supposed to be 1 by 2.5. So 1 minus 1/4 inch is 3/4 of an inch. So I'm gonna mark 3/4 of an inch around this. And you can see this is wavy right here. So it shouldn't be, but it is. So that means, you know, it's gonna be less noticeable when I trim this down. So 3/4 of an inch around. This is just gonna give me kind of an eyeball of where to put my square ruler. Okay, so that's just a test to make sure. So I never cut until I put an outline to make sure. I'm gonna put this closer to me so I can see it, and I'm gonna place that ruler on there. That's 3.5, that's what it's supposed to be. And I'm gonna kind of look to make sure. I've already got the lines, but I'm just gonna kind of look to make sure it looks even. Make sure my lines are straight. Try not to move it. Okay, so there it is at 3.5, and that wonkiness disappeared a little bit. You can't see it as much. And that's what's gonna happen on a block like this. 3-inch, you're gonna be able to see your mistakes more. So I probably cutting these was either off a little bit or something. So let's talk a little bit about the designer. The designer this week is Robin Pickens, and she is a pattern designer. She first started designing fabric, then she got into pattern designing. So her most recent collection is Pansies Posies. It came out last October, and we're almost sold out of it. These are some examples of her patterns: runway strut, farmhouse crossing, and sit down, stay a while. And then the flash sale for today is the Tulip Tango mini charm pack. So that is on sale today. But I wanted to show you her block. She made 2 blocks. Robin did a 3-inch in Wild Blossoms, which is arriving to Fat Quarter Shop in March from Moda. And her 6-inch size she sewed in the Thatched collection, which is her basic for Moda. She loves doing little patchwork squares, but has to admit that sometimes sewing the little squares is a challenge. And that's why I'm reading it at the end, because those were a challenge. It makes her a little crazy to match corners of the patchwork to keep the squares consistent. What do I do about it? Well, the smaller the squares, the more I turn to starching my fabric before cutting, and that helps the small blocks shape and be more manageable. The other thing Robin does is examine if she can do strip piecing for efficiency and press to hide. Press to the side and not open, so I'm opening the end of the seams. So she loves the look, but the little patchwork squares do make her a little crazy. And what you could have done when you were piecing this is you could have done these 2 as strip sets and these 2 as strip sets and cut down, but I didn't want to overwhelm you with my little trim down method. And trimming down blocks, I usually do both ways, meaning I usually start with a regular ruler and draw around and then trim down with a square ruler. But if you don't have a square ruler, just trim with this. But I would say before you trim anything, always measure twice, cut once. That is this block. We're going to take a little intermission, come back, and I'm going to show you my whips I'm working on. So for this week, for the quilt-alongs, we have 2 that we're focusing on, and the Scrappiness is Happiness is every week, and so this is so awesome. It's the easiest block of the series. So simple, anyone can do it. That is my block for this week. Not very exciting, but in the end, it's going to go right here in the quilt. You need the book, and this is the free layout, and I am using the Prairie Collection by Lori Holt. Our next sew along is so fun. It's the Jolly Bar book sew along. I'm having so much fun making these blocks. I'm loving the fabric. I'm just loving everything about it. So this is a low price book. You need this, and then this is the free layout that you would get that tells you what to cut from the book. So the blocks this week are Festoon, and I'm going to show you the next one too and talk a little bit about my tips. Okay, so they're different sizes. So this is Festoon and this is Double Dutch. So my tips for this week are, on the edge of these corner squares, you're gonna save your half square triangles. And last week I incorrectly said I put them in my half square triangle bucket, but I forgot I had so many I made a label for the back. So I'm gonna show you that in a second. But my tip would be to pin this down, sew, save the excess, make half square triangles, and I'm going to show you what to make with it. And you're just using that same technique. Corner squares, that's all this is. And here I was able to use two fabrics that were low volume or not medium, which kills me. It kills me when I make these, but I had to because I had to use it from the Jolly Bar. So if you look from here, if you sew on that line, and then you have all that extra, this is what I made. And I know I've shown it before, but I actually forgot all about it, to be honest. What I did is, from the entire, all the blocks that I made, I saved these and trimmed them down. Let's see. So I didn't use triangle paper, I just trimmed them down to 3.5 inches square. So what I did is I took the excess and then I trimmed them down using a Creative Grids 3.5 inch square ruler. And I tried to just do the placement of the fabric scrappy, because obviously I had a lot of the same fabrics, because you have a lot of the same fabrics. And then I put part of a label down here. So that's what you can do with those leftovers. And now this fabric that I'm using is Simply Delightful by Sherry and Chelsea. I'm going to show you the blocks made in different fabrics. This is Bleu de France by French General, and Crystal sewed these. And so she's using one of the French General solids. If you've never used those solids, they're really nice. They have kind of a softness to them. So these are Bleu de France. The next blocks Nova made, and these are Sun Washed by Corey Yoder. And she's doing a lot of her blocks where they're all the same color within the block. So when you see her finished quilt, you're going to see kind of color placement a little bit different than mine, and that's going to be really fun to see how you can, play with colors and get a different look. And then the last blocks were made by Riley. This is Filigree by Zen Chic, and this is the Spotted collection. That's a basic for Zen Chic. So we have lots of color options to show you. And then this one, she also used a lot of grays and a little bit of yellow. Next week, I'm going to show you the Primrose and the Shoe Fly blocks. And then if you're a beginner, this one would be a great way to start with one of our sew-alongs. And I wanted to let you know our giveaway for this week. We're going to be giving away 3 Pansies Posies layer cakes. And what I want you to do is comment and tell me, for this week's block by Robin Pickens, which size are you sewing? I'd love to know. See you next week.